Nerd alert! Learning is important, right?
Yes, exactly. What a bunch of nerds.
Nerd alert!
Right.
Marketing Architects.
Hello, and welcome to the Marketing Architects, a research-first podcast dedicated to answering your toughest marketing questions. I'm Elena Jasper. I run the marketing team here at Marketing Architects, and I'm joined by my co-host, Rob DeMars, the Chief Product Architect of Misfits and Machines.
Hello!
Hello, we are back with your weekly Nerd Alert. Every week, I'll take a deep dive into academic marketing research and translate its complex ideas into simple, understandable language for Rob and, of course, for all of you. Are you ready to nerd out, Rob?
Nerd levels approaching critical mass. Warning.
All right.
Let's
Sounds
do
like
this.
we're ready to go. As always, we'll link the research we cover in the episode notes. This week, I read a study titled Beyond the Last Touch, Attribution in Online Advertising. This is by Ron Berman from the Wharton School. But before we get into this, Rob, I wanted to ask you, what are your current perceptions of last touch attribution as kind of a marketing measurement practice?
You know, I do get both sides of the issue in terms of last touch just makes everything so easy, right? It's just so measurable and you get that exact data. But I think the other side of it is you're really not getting the full picture of what caused that last touch to happen. So I guess my opinion is probably what everyone else thinks about it. It's, hey, there's aspects of it that you kind of understand why people appreciate it, but you also recognize it's a little bit of a false positive.
Yeah, I think that's pretty in line. I don't think there's many people out there who are like all in on last touch attribution because it's been kind of debunked and criticized. But if you're a fan of last touch attribution, this is not going to go well for you because this study,
Okay.
This study is it's going to prove why last touch attribution is really not the best way to measure your advertising effectiveness. So
spicy.
It's very spicy. The researcher, he uses game theory to analyze the impact of different attribution models on advertiser profits and also publisher revenue, which is kind of an interesting twist into this. But Rob, first, what do you know about game theory?
Game theory is one of those things I find myself saying in meetings to sound smart, but I don't really know what it means. It's sort of like saying first principles. Like, I don't know, it sounds really good, but I'm not sure I completely know what it means, but I kind of get it. Think of a chessboard and maybe you're thinking a couple moves ahead, but that's about it.
So I'm not confident enough to throw out something that I really don't know what it is in a meeting like you are. But yeah, it's one of those it's one of those concepts where someone will say it and you're like, well, I can't stop the meeting and admit that I'm dumb right now, but I don't know what that is. Like you just kind of let it go.
Yeah, so not only will I not ask, but I will use the term myself, not knowing what it really means. I just, I need attention.
Yeah. Okay. Well, why don't we actually teach you what game theory is? So next time you can use it and also understand what it is. All right. So ChatGPT had to help me because again, I had heard of it. I couldn't really define it for you. But what it is, it's the study of how people or organizations make strategic decisions when their choices affect and are affected by others. So to talk about this in the context of marketing, it helps explain competition, like how advertisers bid against each other in auctions, or how brands react to rivals' pricing and promotions. So it's kind of like poker where your next move depends on what others do. So that's why I think it's a game. It's not, you can't just, you're planning out a football game. You can't just say, okay, we're just going to run the ball straight into the end zone. Like it depends what someone else does
to get you to react.
Yes, exactly. So this study, they use game theory as part of this. So we're going to get to that. I just wanted to make sure we defined it up front. Let's talk about the challenge that they're looking at. Most advertisers run campaigns across multiple publishers. So think Google, Meta, other digital platforms. But consumers don't exist in just one place. They're multi-home, which means they visit multiple sites before converting. So like Rob, you don't only go on Facebook. There's a lot of different types of media that you consume. You're not just a bot sitting just staring at Facebook. This is true. But that creates a mess for marketers. It's like a messy web of ad exposures. And traditionally, marketers relied on last touch attribution, which is where you give all the credit for a conversion to the last ad your customer clicked. Sounds really nice and simple, but this study finds that last touch leads advertisers to overvalue certain ads, underfund others, and ultimately make worse bidding decisions in digital ad auctions. And here's how they got there. So the study models online ad auctions where advertisers bid for impressions on different platforms. And here are a couple of the takeaways. First, last touch attribution overvalues later ads in the customer journey. Not a huge surprise. The study found that advertisers using last touch aggressively bid up the cost of ads that appear just before the conversion, even if earlier touch points played a role. That's why it gets so expensive when you're bidding at the very bottom of the funnel. This leads to overexposure, so too many ads shown, which can drive up your costs without increasing conversions. The second big takeaway is that publishers benefit at advertisers' expense. Because that last touch and encouraged such aggressive bidding on conversion stage ads, publishers make more money while advertisers see lower profits. So platforms like the Googler and Meta, they love when advertisers use last touch because it keeps ad prices high. And advertisers using last touch, they can lose profits compared to no attribution at all, which that's my favorite finding from this. So this study showed that advertisers who didn't use any attribution method did better than those relying on last touch because it artificially inflates competition for certain ads, which leads to just a total wasted budget. It's like a blind squirrel finds a nut. I don't know what the right metaphor is, but like you could just do nothing and you're probably going to be better than last touch attribution. So what do we do instead? We've covered a lot of different attribution models on this show, but this study explored an interesting method, shapely value attribution. So this is where game theory comes back. This is a concept. It distributes credit for a conversion more fairly across all ad exposures. So instead of just rewarding the last touch point, it considers how much each ad actually contributed. So that's that idea of game theory and multiple things playing a role. So if advertisers used Shapely instead of last touch, they allocated their budget more efficiently, they increased their own profits rather than just feeding publishers, and they reduced wasted ad spend on overexposed impressions. So when I first heard about Shapely, I was like, is this media mix modeling? Because it sounded to me a lot like media mix modeling, like taking into account. It's not. So this is where it gets confusing.
So what is it?
So MMM is more of a regression-based model, so it looks more at broad trends, while Shapely value, it's a method used within multi-touch attribution. So some marketers are experimenting with using like Shapely values within MMM to better distribute credit across media channels. So it's basically just all, think about multi-touch attribution. It's about just looking at what did different marketing channels contribute to like the final result. The final takeaway is, and I'm not an attribution expert. I don't know. Attribution isn't just a reporting issue. Like it shapes your ad strategy, which I think that's so cool to think about. You think about attribution as it's the end, but it's actually the beginning of what you choose to do next. Like it really matters a lot. That's why over and over again, attribution is the number one issue challenge that marketers have. Like what's working?
God, my brain hurts when you try to describe the Shapely thing though. They're like,
that my brain hurt too, to be honest. You just need to know that basically I would say you don't need to be an expert on the Shapely value attribution, like no marketer. The idea is that you need to figure out attribution methods that more fairly distribute credit. And we see that a lot actually where clients come to us and they might have different measurement partners for specific channels. Almost always, if they're measuring one channel, they are over attributing credit to that channel. So it's just so important to not let that happen.
But if somebody wants to use the Shapely, is that what they call it? The Shapely? Kind of like you called it the Googler?
It's called Shapely value attribution.
That methodology, how does one learn how to do it? Am I asking dumb questions?
No, I mean, I think if you're interested, so it sounds like it's Shapely, like it's a method. So it can be used within different types of models. So you could use it within MMM. You could use it within multi-touch attribution. I think that probably do some research on it. Ask your attribution partners if they've heard of it.
Google deep research on Shapely.
Yeah, and I bet some forms of attribution are more like they're using it more than others. To be honest, these questions are pressing the limits of my knowledge of this study and attribution.
Yeah, this is good though. I had never heard of Shapely before. So, I mean, this is, I think, going to be really interesting for folks to go, okay, what's this? I've heard of MMM. I can say it. I don't exactly understand how it's done. And now I've got another one to ask our analytics team about to go. I can sound smart again. Like when I say game theory, I can say, what about Shapely?
Yeah, throw that out. Just lob that over at your attribution team and see what happens. Well, let's do a palate cleanser for your brain with the Rob GPT.
Thank you.
Last touch attribution is like giving all the credit for a championship win to the player who scored the final point, ignoring the passes, assists, and defense that actually made the win possible. Isn't that nice? Wasn't that a fun one?
That was a really fun one.
That's it for this episode of The Marketing Architects. We'd like to thank Taylor De Los Reyes for producing the show. You can connect with us on LinkedIn, and if you like the podcast, please leave us a review. Now go forth and build great marketing.
I still can't get over the fact that you called Google the Googler. Is that I like this, like the Hamburglar?
Yeah,
You
it's
know
what
the
I call them.
Hamburglar, the Googler.
Yeah, the
I like
Googler,
that.
the Goog. You gotta be careful, the Googler. It's like I talk about Disney. I refer to Disney as Mickey Mouse. Don't anger the mouse. You know, it's a
Right? Oh,
similar thing.
totally. Get rabies from that mouse.
Marketing architects.